So I've said this before. I realized as I put this together that I'd made this statement in a previous service, and it may not have been 2 words at that occasion, but I've realized that I have a style, and apparently it's to find things that terrified me as a child and use this as a cathartic process of dealing with it. So I've discovered that there are 2 words that strike fear into many people's lives, and it is all rooted in a childhood experience. And they're 2 words that don't just live in our childhood. They're words that seem to now follow us around. They're words that no one wants to hear, be that when you are at school, at university, in a job interview. I'm sure there are those of you, when I give you these 2 words, will go, you know what, I love that. And you are a unique bunch of people, and often you are the reason that many of us find those 2 words terrifying, and that will make far more sense as I get into it. But the 2 words are group project. Group project. Group projects are either the single best thing that you'll take part in or the single worst thing you'll take part in. There is no middle ground in a group project. That's because you are either the person who's gone, I've done about 3% of the work and got all of the same grades as everyone else. Or you are the people that have done 97% of the work and got the same grades as everybody else. Group projects are bred on this idea of engaging everyone to be a part of it. That we all can take part, we can all do different things, we can all find different ways of being involved. And this really struck home for me because recently Evie had a group project in school. And I won't go into what the project is, but it was a group project and they had 2 weeks. And there was a group of 3 of them, which was brilliant. And so they began to do the work, and the group project fell into what I believe is a fairly typical group project structure. There was a child who was very engaged, there was a child who was very unengaged, and there was a child who went on holiday on Monday of week 2 for 2 weeks. So missed half of the work and the presentation session. But they don't necessarily work as a way of understanding the correct distribution of praise. Because the thing is, no matter how much you've put in, you are represented as a group. And there is nothing more frustrating. And I must confess, I don't mind group projects because I was always very bolshy at school, so I would do a lot of talking. So I quite enjoyed group projects because I didn't do anything for 2 weeks. I was given everyone else's notes on the Friday. I stood in front of class and delivered a seamless presentation on someone else's work and got all the accolade for being very comfortable standing up the front. But group projects don't necessarily work as a fair distribution of praise. What they do is they give us a blanket understanding and allow everyone to take an equal level of recognition for the work that's been done, often by a smaller number than that is representing the entire group. In many ways, group projects leave room for a wonder of exploitation. Someone can do 90% of the work while only receiving 20% of the praise. I would continue to argue there are few words left in society that are worse than group project. Anyone who's had the privilege of doing a job interview, where part of the interview process is to do a group project, will know that they may well have not got that job because of someone else falling short in the group, not themselves. But it's a fascinating idea, and I love this idea of group projects because it helps us this morning as we go into today's passage just to grasp something of the appropriateness of recognition. The appropriateness of giving the correct recognition and receiving the correct recognition. So I'm going to ask Faith to come forward, and she's going to read from Acts for us this morning. Thank you, Faith.
In Lystra there sat a man who was lame. He had been that way from birth and had never walked. He listened to Paul as he was speaking. Paul looked directly at him, saw that he had faith to be healed, and called out, "Stand up on your feet." And at that, the man jumped up and began to walk. When the crowd saw what Paul had done, they shouted in the Lycaonian language, "The gods have come down to us in human form." Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul they called Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. The priest of Zeus, whose temple was just outside the city, brought bowls and wreaths to the city gates because he and the crowd wanted to offer sacrifices to them. But when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of this, they tore their clothes and rushed out to the crowd, shouting, "Friends, why are you doing this? We too are only human like you. We are bringing you the good news, telling you to turn from these worthless things to the living God, who made the heavens and the earth and the sea and everything in them. In the past, he let all nations go their own way. Yet he has not left himself without testimony. He has shown kindness by giving you rain from heaven and crops in their seasons. He's provided you with plenty of food and fills your heart with joy." Even with these words, they had difficulty keeping the crowd from sacrificing to them. Then some Jews came out of Antioch and Iconium and won the crowd over. They stoned Paul and dragged him outside of the city, thinking he was dead.
There's a huge amount that happens in this little section for us this morning, which is good, because any of you on the Bible reading plan will have noticed that this part of Acts reads like a travel brochure. They do a whole lot of traveling, and they spend a huge amount of time in accommodation provided by them from Rome. So it was good that something happened in this moment, but so much ends up happening here. Those of you who were with us a few weeks ago will have heard a very similar encounter when Peter and John heal a man at the gate known as Beautiful. And yet the outworking of this story is very different from that one. So I want us to focus on 3 points. There's so much here. There's so many other ways we could have gone, but I think there's 3 points. And I just want us to hold that group project conundrum in mind as we go through them. The first one is this: it is essential that we give credit to God for the wonders of his works. It is essential we give credit to God for the wonders of his works. As I said, it's that group project conundrum. There is always a danger that when something happens that we get to be a part of, we just allow the spotlight to linger on us a little longer than maybe is appropriate. We love it. It's human nature. Any of us that say that we don't are lying. We may be shy, please hear that. We may be introverts, but deep down we kind of like it when we get the spotlight. But we need to understand this, so let's have a look at what occurred. In verse 9 we read, "He listened to Paul as he was speaking. Paul looked directly at him, saw that he had faith to be healed, and called out, 'Stand up on your feet.' At that the man jumped up and began to walk." There's the moment. Paul has healed this man. Paul has healed this man. That's what we see. For those sat there, that's what they've seen. They've seen Paul say to this man, "Get up and walk," and the man has gotten up and walked. It's something that we can so often know because we know it. We know that Paul didn't heal the man. And yet, for those observing, that's how it appeared. And there's something we can learn in this moment, that sometimes, just because we know that we would credit it to God, doesn't mean those observing would know that's the way that it's gone. And therefore, we create space for us to allow the spotlight to linger just for a moment in people's confusion. We quite like it. But Paul understood this was a group project. Paul may have been there to tell the man to stand up on his feet, but Paul knew that he was not the one who had worked the healing for the man. "Friends, why are you doing this? We too are only human like you. We bring good news, telling you to turn from worthless things to the living God, who made the heavens and the earth and the sea and everything in them." Right here, right in that moment, Paul is stepping aside to allow the limelight to fall back on God. Paul is moving out of the way so that those present would be able to catch a glimpse of God. In John 3, we read it put like this by John the Baptist: He must become greater, I must become less. That's what we see here. That is what Paul is doing here. Paul is quite literally saying, look at me less so you can see more of who God is. It's an incredible danger for any of us in any walk of life, but particularly within our Christian faith, that when things start to go well, when things start to change in people's lives, when we've said to them, "I want to pray for you," and then God does something, that we are cautious not to say, "Well, I am pretty good at praying. No. We need to get out of the way, just as Paul tries to here, to allow people to see that it is God at work. You know what? Paul would be the dream partner in a group project. Because right here we see an understanding of what he can bring to the table. He is present. He sees a problem, and he believes in a God who can change that problem. And then he gets out of the way. What an incredible partner to work with on any form of project. Because there is always that temptation to take a little bit more credit than we deserve. As I'm going to do now, because it was the best example I could give. I used to play football in Cheddar, where I used to live, and for a long part of my career I played in defence, but it turns out I'm not great in defence, but I was quite good up front. And one of the games I scored a hat-trick. You can all look impressed, thank you. There we are. And I remember it quite clearly because I scored a hat-trick, and one of the punishments of scoring a hat-trick, which is bizarre, was I had to buy everyone from the team a drink, which seemed cruel. The problem was this. 2 of the goals out of the 3, a hat-trick for those that don't know is 3 goals, 2 of the goals were less than maybe warranted. One was a header from a corner, which hit me in the face, and I knew nothing about because the player in front of me ducked. And the other was a cross-field pass, which I completely mishit and went in at the near post, which I will still tell you if I was in Cheddar, I absolutely meant. But I can confess before you now, I had no intention of that being where the ball would end up, but Julie took all the praise that came my way. It's fascinating how quickly the human habit is to take credit for something that in truth was nothing to do with us. In any other part of the field, it was just a horrific pass. And yet it gave me room to take credit for something that I hadn't really meant. Wasn't what I was planning to do, wasn't really what I'd done for many intents and purposes. The problem was that I would have been very comfortable telling people at the time that I meant it. I'd have been happy to tell them, obviously I saw the keeper off his line. And it's dangerous, isn't it? Because it's so subtle and it's so innocent. It doesn't mean anything. And yet the danger is I slowly begin to take more and more credit for things that I'm doing in my life that aren't really my doing. And it starts to bleed from just my everyday life into my faith. And suddenly I start standing here believing that, you know what? Yeah, I am delivering a great preach. I have nailed this. And I forget to remember in my own life, it is all about God. I wonder the areas of your life where you have fallen into this trap, maybe just very subtly. Just giving the limelight slightly longer to dwell on you before talking about God, before deflecting to him, before taking that truth. I must become less so he can become greater. It's crucial we give credit to God for the works he is doing in our life and in the lives of those around us. It's so important that we do that, that we recognize that. And that plays into this whole encounter, because this encounter is a hotbed of drama. This is like the best EastEnders episode ever. It's just a hotbed of things happening, but all of these steps that we're going to walk through this morning are so important to understand how this plays out within our own lives. It is crucial we give credit to God for the work that he is doing in our lives and the lives of those around us, which becomes even more relevant when we pick up our second point. The speed at which people's opinions change, it's crucial that we don't seek human acceptance. The speed at which people's opinion will change means it's crucial that we don't seek human acceptance. I don't know how many of you are like me, but we love that saying, hero to villain. Hero to villain. Anyone in the sports world will know it, but maybe the best picture I can paint of it is the Great British Bake Off. Great British Bake Off is built on this idea of hero to villain in so many senses, because what it does is it draws you into a character. Obviously, this is all real life, so we're dealing with very real life, clearly. But we've got this moment where this person, this underdog, has saved themselves with the most incredible gingerbread showstopper, and we love them. And no one saw it coming because they've really struggled all season so far, and they've made this incredible thing, and everyone in the tent loves them, and we've got this hero figure. And we're like, yes. And then next week we tune in. And they go to the fridge And they place their pavlova in the fridge, or freezer, I'm guessing, next to their oppositions. And then they take theirs out, but instead of shutting the fridge door again, they leave it open. And one week they were a hero, and the next week they're a villain. And those of us that watch it and don't even begin to pretend, A, you don't watch it, and B, you don't respond like I do, are baying for blood. How could they do that? Only last week I was telling you they're my best friend and I want them at everything I do in my life. And now I can't stand them. I always knew they were bad. Bad egg. It's amazing how quickly our opinion can change on so fragile little things. The truth is this, my friends, we are fickle, fickle people. We swing like a pendulum in our opinions, be that of people, be that of events, of the place of pineapple when it comes to pizza. We are fickle. And yet we spend so much of our lives striving for other people's value and other people's praise, when the truth is, they are fickle. I want you to imagine for a moment that your spiritual life is like a volume dial, be that in your car, on your record player, however you choose to listen to music. But your spiritual faith is like a volume dial, and there are areas of your life where you will intentionally turn it up. Sunday morning in Moriah Baptist Church, bang, 11. Prayer times, an 8. We're calming down a little bit, but we're still spiritual. We're still sharing. Work on a Monday, 2. Hanging out with friends on a Friday, 0. It amazes me how I adjust my faith based on the setting in which I am in. And the only variable I can understand is the people present have had an influence on me, not my faith on them. Why? Because I care too much often about what people think. And yet I know they are fickle, because I know I'm fickle. So why do I live my life trying to second guess how I should respond to someone so that they like me, when, in point 1, the truth is, it's not really about me? The disservice we do to God when we turn the volume dial down to naught is incredible. Because the truth is, he's still present. He's still at work. I'm just becoming irrelevant to what he's doing in that moment by having no input. We spend so much of our lives seeking affirmation, seeking acceptance from people, that we are very quick to change the way that we act. I wonder if I were to ask you just to visualize your week just gone on that dial, where do you know you turn it down? Where do you know you turn it up? And ask yourself this question. Not to beat yourself up, but ask the question, why? What is it that drives me to do that? What is it that drives me to do that? The reason I bring this point out is because we see in this passage the speed at which people's opinions can change. Verse 18, even with these words, the words that Paul spoke, they had difficulty keeping the crowd from sacrificing to them. That's the situation we are in. Verse 18. Even with these words, they had difficulty keeping the crowd from sacrificing to them. The people are ready to offer sacrifices to Paul and Barnabas. This is peak popularity right here. These guys should run for president. This is peak. These people love them. They can get all the food they want. This is like the optimum moment right here, verse 18. Verse 19. Then some Jews came from Antioch and Iconium and won the crowd over. They stoned Paul and dragged him outside the city thinking he was dead. It's one verse. They're sacrificing the fattened calf to throwing stones at him until he's dead. In one verse. Why on earth do we spend so much of our lives trying to impress other people when in the space of a verse they may go from lauding us to burying us? It fascinates me how much, and I can only speak for myself, but I'm guessing I'm not the only person in this room, where I have spent my life trying to navigate every decision based on other people. And in the space of a verse, these people have gone from collecting the fattened calf to sacrifice to them. They're like 30 seconds away from building monuments, to picking up the stones they would have used to build the monuments to throw at Paul until he is assumed dead. The speed at which people's opinions change mean it is crucial we understand we do not live the lives we live to try and impress other people, because people will change. People are fickle. I am fickle. It's not an accusation on anyone else. So it is crucial that we are who we are, who God has called us to be in every setting, in every time. We read this in Ephesians. It puts it brilliantly for us. Then we will no longer be infants, tossed back and forth by the waves and blown here and there by every wind of teaching and by the cunning and craftiness of people in their deceitful scheming. The truth is, we need to be firm. And firmness becomes irrelevant of the setting in which we then find ourselves, because we are firm. No longer blown around, no longer caught up in deceit. We need to be firm so we can withstand false teaching, funky doctrine, and the whim of people. I thought about this as I sat in the office last week. I've gone through some bizarre church settings. So when I look at that passage in Ephesians, I have every right to go, you know what? False teaching and wrong doctrine, yeah, that's the thing that swayed me. But I can stand here and honestly tell you I've spent more of my life swayed by people that have nothing to do with theology and doctrine than I have by any false theology and doctrine. Because I live my life based on the eye line of what everyone's looking at in me. And I want to impress them. I want to be liked. And yet I see here the speed at which people's opinion will change. So the realization for me is I need to be true to who I am and who God has made me to be. And you need to be true to who you are and who God has made you to be. Points 1 and 2 have looked at Paul and Barnabas from their position. And we could sit ourselves very easily with them in that understanding of how to correctly distribute praise to God and how important it is not to bow to the pressure of people. But point 3 is a fun one. Point 3 is the one where we have to sit the other side of this. Avoid the danger of putting someone or something above God. I'll be honest with you. From the minute, and Mark knows this to be true, from the minute I realized the 5 chapters I had to work from, this was the one I wanted to preach on, and this is the point I wanted to make. That doesn't devalue anything else I've said, but we have this wonderful flip. Those first 2 points, we've sat there in that position of Paul and Barnabas. Now we stand in amongst the crowd. Paul looked directly at him, saw that he had faith to be healed, and called out, "Stand up on your feet." At that, the man jumped up and began to walk. The miracle has happened. The man is on his feet. Look how the crowd responds to this moment. When the crowd saw what Paul had done, they shouted in Lycaonian language, "The gods have come down to us in human form." Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul they called Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. The priest of Zeus, whose temple was just outside the city, brought bulls and wreaths to the city gate, because he and the crowd wanted to sacrifice to them. It is so over the top, it is unreal. Isn't it? But is it? Is it actually that over the top? Is it just that they were uneducated? It was a backward people, surely. It was a different time. They don't have the internet. All the other things that we like to lay down on these texts. But we have to ask ourselves this. Is that an over-the-top response? Because I would argue that each of us are guilty of this kind of response in our own lives. Now, it may not have resulted in us collecting the fattened calf, but I believe that each of us needs to hear this biblical warning clearly. Because this response from the people I have seen time and time again in modern day culture, within our churches and within people that I know. So I pray for myself as much as any of us that we take this seriously. It maybe doesn't look like us rounding up the cattle for a burnt sacrifice, but I wonder how guilty we are of putting a person on a pedestal. How guilty are we of putting a person on a pedestal? Those of you who like sport, please, or don't like sport, sorry, please forgive me. Yesterday, Liverpool won, first time in a long time. It's a great moment for us. But something happened in the game that really fed into this, not in my notes, but made the point perfectly for me. Mo Salah scored his 250th goal for Liverpool, puts him into a category of only 3 players that have ever done it. And the commentator said, he's now on the Mount Rushmore of Liverpool. He is a man paid a ridiculously large amount of money to kick a football around, and I guarantee he scored hat-tricks where he did not mean any of those goals. But the speed at which we want to put people on a pedestal, the praise that was lavished on him, is fascinating, isn't it? We may read these biblical passages and go, gosh, no one responds like that anymore. Listen to the way the commentators talked about a man who is paid money to do his job, doing his job. And there would have been a stadium full of kids with his name on the back of their shirts. The speed at which we will put people on a pedestal is terrifying. The pop world would call it idolizing them. But it happens in spiritual circles too, where we adore a preacher, we grow an unhealthy following for a pastor. We will only listen to that person's opinion. We won't hear a bad word said against them. We ignore the collective wisdom of the voice of others to listen to the singular. It is dangerous, and I say that fully aware that you are sat listening to me. I am not that good. But the speed at which we have done it, the speed at which we will pedestal people, the danger isn't enjoying someone's preaching or being inspired by someone. The problem is, and this is what we see in this passage, is when that person begins to be elevated above God in our lives. When that person becomes more important than God. This passage, we see it shown through worship, sacrifice, this idolization. It's something we still see today. We still see it today. Still happens in churches today, I promise you that. It'd almost be easier, though, if it was just people, because we could say, you know what, that's fine, I won't pay that much attention to people. But there are so many areas where this becomes a danger for us. This is such an important thing for us to grasp, because it's not just people. If it were, it would be simple. But for some people, that thing is communion. Seems ridiculous, Tim. But for some people, this is so important, so significant. And please hear me, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it becomes so significant that actually if we were to look at it, we would say, yeah, coming to the table peaks that time with God sometimes. Because this is a symbolism. When communion becomes more important than God, when our prayers become more important than God, when being at that prayer time is more about what people see of us than it is about coming into a prayer time, reading our Bibles, the building, when we prioritize the building over God. Those of us that get hung up on orders of service, when making sure the service runs better, so it's more efficient, than the focus being on God. On the outfits that people have chosen to wear to church are more important, and our appearance is more important than God. None of these things are bad, but please hear this, and I'm very comfortable saying this. Neither were Paul and Barnabas. Paul and Barnabas weren't bad, and yet the response to them was to worship them as gods. None of these things are bad, but none of them are God. And the danger is we elevate earthly things we can grasp above God, and they become more important, and they're all we talk about. Paul is not God, and the healing was not Paul's work. It was all about God. And this is the kicker for me. It was all about God, but the people set their eye line too low. And that's what we do when we raise up things like this. Please hear me, I love communion. It's one of my favorite parts of my month. But it should never be the eye line that I settle on, because I need my eye line fixed on God. And what the people do in this passage is they lower their eye line to Paul and Barnabas. And they elevate them above God. And each and every one of us in our own way will inevitably be guilty of this. When the music in church becomes more important than the one that we are playing to. When the music becomes more important than the one we are playing to. When being at the prayer time is more important than the heart of prayer within. When the ritual of Bible reading has become more important than connecting with the one whom the book is all about. When communion becomes the focus and we lose sight of the cross which it represents. When we fall into any of these moments, then we have lowered our eye line from God to earth, from the holy to the household. It is subtle, and it is so often not bad things. Please hear me. These are not bad things, but they are not God. And as we adjust that focus just enough, we miss out on God because we've replaced him with lots of little gods. I wonder where we've set our eye line too low. Where we've elevated earthly things into a position above God. It would have been so easy for me to talk about idolatry and football and money and all of those things because it's easy in church to make them the bad things. They're out there, we're in here, we're holy. But we see Paul and Barnabas are the problem here. Good people. Good people who have healed a man. And yet the people lose sight of God to elevate them. Which means there must be places in my life where I can fall into the trap of losing sight of God and elevating people and things. On the surface, this seems like such a simple passage. And yet as we just peel back the layers, we see the importance of keeping God at the center of all that we do. Not looking to take credit for ourselves, not looking to impress people, and not letting anything come above God in our lives. I wonder as I close, what's going to be the most challenging for you this week from this passage? Because each of us are different. Some of us know that we're desperate to impress people. So we're willing to change who we are this week to make sure that we fit in. Some of us love the spotlight. So we'll just let it loiter for a little longer than maybe we're due. For others of us, it's going to be about assessing everything that we place value in and checking that nothing comes above God in the way we live our day-to-day lives.